Lewis Cook was a Haudenosaunee leader, meaning that he was part of the five tribes of the Iroquois, namely the Mohawk. He had been adopted into the Mohawk because he was not part of the Mohawk from birth. His mother was a Native American. His father was an African American or a Black American. By this time, the French and the Iroquois had come into an alliance, and so the French Iroquois kidnapped this boy for their own purposes. The French side wanted to use him as a slave, as he was a black man, but the Mohawk, the Iroquois side, decided to intervene on his behalf and set him free as a student warrior for the Mohawk. He would rise in rank, learning their culture and becoming part of their system. It wasn't unusual for people who were napped into the Iroquois to become high levels, but this was the first time a black person did this. Now, I want to state something very clear here. Back in the day, people did not necessarily equate nation with race anywhere in the world, really. And so, even in the Iroquois, when they had some individuals, and they've had a lot, of African descent, they could rise in the ranks with no thinking of whether they were black or white, depending on whether or not they were fully integrated into the system of the Iroquois. He was born in Saratake, or Saratoga, New York, in what is today Schuylerville. To paint the picture for you, obviously there must have been some black people because his father was black, but there was also the Dutch, the French, the Iroquois, native tribes like his mother's tribe, and several other smaller bands, some that fell under the protection of the Iroquois. When he was taken in by the Iroquois and raised as an Iroquois, they gave him this name. I'll stick with Lewis Cook, but I'll give you the translation, which means he who unties himself from the group. As I mentioned earlier, the Iroquois and the French were working together in some ways. And so he was taught French and educated as a Catholic. As a grown man, he would fight in two wars: the French and Indian War and the 7 Years' War. In the French and Indian War, he fought on the French side, obviously, but the Iroquois nation was divided because some, if not most, of the Iroquois fought on the British side. The British would win and take some territory away from the French. Since he was on the side of the French, he never truly got over the defeat of the French. And so he sided with the Americans when it was the Americans versus the British. And this is one of the letters after 1776 and all the other skirmishes that happened afterwards. So in 1793, when he led the Oneida, this was a letter to George Washington from the Oneida. We do not like to disturb you unless we are forced to it by our wants, or to obtain that justice which by our service and suffering we have a right to claim, and cannot in any other manner obtain. In such case we turn our eyes to you for that which we cannot procure from any other. We believe you will do justice, and wish none of our Indian nations to be wronged, nor that any individual among them should complain of not having been rewarded equally with others for service done to the United States. Lewis Cook is going to be named in this next part of the letter. The Oneidas were the only nation of Indians who held fast the covenant chain which was made between the Five Nations and the people of the United States. All the others deserted or fought against you in the late war. You gave Col Lewis Cook, that's his mention, of the Conewagas tribe in Canada, and a number of our Oneida Nation commissions to be officers in the army and service of your people. Of these lost we are the remains. All the others are taken away by death. We have suffered hardship, undergone fatigues, and have fought with and for you because we held fast the covenant chain with our brethren of the United States. Our aged fathers, our wives, and little ones were obliged for a time to remove from our lands and frequently to suffer for want of necessaries. When peace was restored, we returned with them and waited for the reward of our service. We acknowledge the goodness of our brethren for what we have received, but have been informed that Col Lewis Cook has also received commutation for half pay, and this we have not received. We know not the reason. We empowered our trustee and good friend Colonist A. Van Slake of Schenectady to transact our business for us, who informs us that he has not yet been able to succeed. We fear that evil disposed persons have imposed upon you and us, or our cause would have been heard before now, and justice done to us as well as Col Lewis Cook. You know our willingness to serve our brethren of the United States. We have but lately given a new proof of this and will do much more if required. Father, we have by this opened our hearts to you. We have strengthened the request of our friend Cornelius A. von Slake made in our behalf, and we now wish to open our ears to hear and our eyes to read what answer you shall give us on this subject, your children. Peter Ossaket and Colin Cook were supposed to negotiate on the behalf of the Oneida, since Col Cook used to negotiate for the Mohawk. And this is what happened. As you can see here, this is a list showing the history of treaties made between the Oneida Nation and the American nation. So in 1794, they guaranteed territorial integrity of the Oneida Nation. In 1788, the Oneidas ceded all lands in New York to the state except 270,000 acres reserved. 1793, they passed by Congress forbids the state or individuals from acquiring Indian land without federal consent. 1794 confirms the Oneidas' rights to their land. 1785, Oneidas sold a portion of their land between Unadilla and Chenango River for $11,000. Oneida lose 300,000 acres. 1795 to 1846, through 26 transactions, the state of New York acquired the remaining land except for 32 acres. 1823 to 1838, impoverished and threatened with force of removal, caused half of the Oneidas to relocate to Wisconsin and Canada. Now, the final part of this is actually more tragic than you think, because to try and show good favor, Carl fought with the Americans against Canada, parts of Canada, and he fell off a horse and died. He died in 1813, and as you can see there, the Oneida kept getting beaten around till, well, till the 1900s. This half Native American, half African has made a lot of contributions to the lands, but some of those contributions didn't matter in the end because of how vicious and sinister the Europeans were. And so the history would go on and remember him while he is relegated to the back. He still exists and was a very important piece in why the United States became the United States. And of course, other people, such as himself, would play important roles in why America is governed the way that it is governed today.